Welcome to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast, where we will go beyond the balance sheet with our guests, not only to share from our personal experience as financial advisors of over 25 plus years, but also to learn from our guests about the issues and topics that are important to them. Our firm specializes in taking care of the financial plans for individuals and small businesses by helping our clients identify their individual goals and taking a conservative and ongoing approach to helping accomplish them. We are located in Hickory, North Carolina, and look forward to continuing to serve our clients and our community. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy this week's episode.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast today, and we're happy you're joining us. We're going to talk about a little bit the value of sports and local economy, something near and dear to everyone in the office. Every one of us have either played sports or still involved with sports or deal with our kids as they're in their sporting lives here in their youth. And joining us today is Mark Seaman, a good friend, and also Director of Parks and Rec and Sports Tourism Travel with the City of Hickory. So we're happy to have him with us. I've known Mark, and myself and Les have known Mark for years. I think
about since I moved here, probably.
Yeah, I think me and you
12,
the first
13. Wow, geez. 14 years maybe now.
Yeah, we got to know each other after, I think, the Hickory Young Professionals. We were founding members of that.
Yes.
We're not allowed in there anymore.
I was the first person actually that aged out of there.
Were you really?
I was the first member that got kicked out for being too old.
Wow.
A little trivia there for you.
I did not know
Didn't know it was going to be trivia night.
Did you go 5 extra years until they figured out how old you were, or what was it?
No, somebody was on to me. I showed up to a meeting. They said, "You're too old. You got to leave."
Oh, gosh. They have to be on a bad list. That's awful. So, well, we're happy to have you here. We're just since we're so involved in sports, and we think that you have an interesting position to us. I know that you also have an interesting past, and that's one thing me and Les were talking about. Is kind of we were preparing. Where you came from and where you're at today. The path is not just in the world of parks and recreation. So share us a little bit. You started in racing. I know that's kind of.
Actually, I started in baseball.
Baseball, okay.
Started in baseball. Well, first off, it's good to see you, Ryan.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you guys having me on. I look forward to it, and hopefully I have a little bit of interest here to keep people awake during this.
Yep.
So,
we edit it, so if you don't,
there you go. You cut out anything. I like it. That's perfect. That's what I like to hear. So, I graduated from the University of Tennessee, ironically enough, with a degree in Parks and Rec.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. And then I had to do an internship. So I did an internship with the local minor league baseball team, at that time, the Knoxville Smokies.
Yeah. Okay.
And worked at the end of my internship, which would have been the summer of '94. Then they offered me a full-time position, and I stayed there until the end of the '04 season. So I was there 11 seasons. Then I went to work for a startup NASCAR team, who is still running today. It's Front Row Motorsports. In fact, their driver, Micah McDowell, won the Daytona 500 this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was neat. I was there when they first started that team back in '04,
and so which
was
a
great experience.
Same driver.
Different drivers.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
we've been through, even in the short time I was there, we went through a ton of different drivers. The way I got that job is the gentleman that owns the team is a Taco Bell franchisee. And so they did sponsorship with the baseball team, the Smokies. Okay. And him and I developed a friendship. And he said, "I'm starting this race team. I want you to come work for me."
Cool.
And so I said, why not? Let's give it a shot. So we did that for about 3 or 4 years. And then the opportunity with the Crawdads became available. And when I was with the minor league team in Knoxville, I was the assistant general manager when I left.
Okay.
And as I got in doing that, my goal was to be a general manager someday. So when the Crawdads job opened up, of course, I knew David Haas, who was the former GM before me, and because Don Beaver owned the Smokies.
Okay, so I was thinking he owned both, the Crawdads and the
Smokies. He bought the Crawdads in '95. That was when he was, for anybody that might remember, when they tried to get Major League Baseball in Charlotte back in the late 90s.
Right.
That was Don Beaver, and he was going to own all his own affiliates. So at that time, he had Hickory, which was low A, Winston-Salem, which was high A, the Smokies double A, and the New Orleans team, which was triple A.
Right.
And then Charlotte would have been the major league affiliate, obviously.
Okay.
So obviously I had a connection. Pete Fish actually hired me.
Okay,
So I interviewed
yes,
he hired me
him.
as the GM here and did that for 12 seasons. And then obviously 2 summers ago, moved into the current role, Parks Rec and Sports Tourism.
Right. Well, good.
So,
Well, I've been involved in the City of Hickory and that's something that, and obviously with youth sports. So I know that Parks and Rec, that department has been great over the years. A lot of interest from, and it's been a home for many of the young kids to play different sports. And it's been very well organized. And we got a lot of parks to fill, I guess, with games and practice. Oh my gosh! Okay, so there's 26.
There's 26 parks. Not all have fields and
right.
soccer fields or baseball fields or whatever, but there's 26 parks in the city of Hickory.
Right. So your role now, though, has changed slightly from previously. How this role has maybe interacted, or maybe it's a totally different role. Enlighten those listening on it. It's got the sports tourism in the back of the title.
Exactly. So prior to me starting, about 6 months prior to myself starting, they actually moved parks maintenance, which is all the facilities, mowing the parks, taking care of the fields, all that type of thing, from the Parks and Rec department to the public service department. So Public Works takes care of all that end of it now. And then when I started, they added the sports tourism piece. So we still do a lot of the same things in terms of, like you mentioned, the rec sports, the running the facilities. We do programming. We do all sorts of things. Like we have a night ride out at the bike trails coming up.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Friday night. We've had one back in March. Went really well after a few failed attempts because of Mother Nature. But we do a lot of different programs, things like that. We run the rec, but then the sports tourism piece is basically about driving economic impact to the city of Hickory.
Okay.
And that's the main focus. Now, that can take on a ton of different ways that you can do that. Just as, for instance, to take yourself. You guys travel to tournaments.
Correct, yes.
When you go to a tournament, depending on how far away, I mean, obviously, if it's in Mooresville or Huntersville or something like that, you may drive back and forth. But, if it's in Columbia or, if it's in Greenville, South Carolina, you're probably going to spend the night.
Exactly.
So, but even if you drive back and forth, you're still talking about potentially when you go into wherever, you're putting gas in your car.
I can't go into a convenience store and not buying gas and not spend $20 with my kids. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Snacks, lunch.
Yeah, Gatorades, Pepsis, all that kind of stuff.
And that brings money into the economy.
It's being spent here instead of being spent somewhere else. Correct. And obviously, and then, like you said, if you're at a tournament all day, you got to eat lunch. Potentially, what time you start, you might have to eat breakfast. Exactly. You got to eat lunch. You've stopped to get gas. You walked into the convenience store, dropped $20. You stopped at the convenience store on the way out. Maybe even depending on how, sometimes those tournaments go 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. You're going to grab something to eat on the way home. And all those things add up. And we'd much rather, I shouldn't say much rather, because you're going to go people aren't going to just all of a sudden only go to Hickory.
Right.
But we want to be in that mix so that people come here. And there's a benefit not only in the economic impact, but it's a benefit for you. Because if you're running a tournament in Hickory or playing in a tournament in Hickory, you get to sleep in your own bed.
Exactly.
You don't have to travel. It's so much easier.
Right.
Instead of traveling, wherever, or we can throw out however many number of cities. So there's just a lot of little things, and it's hard to see. And I think it is sometimes hard for somebody to think all that stuff does add up, but it does all add up.
It does.
And then when you start talking about spending a night somewhere. And, you and I were talking before we got started with this, just here even locally, you and your family went out to eat, this past weekend. And, it was $100 for the 4 of you to eat and get appetizers and all that kind of stuff. So if you're in wherever and you're there for a tournament, you're going to take the kids out to eat.
Exactly.
And you're going to drop, $40, $50, $60, $70 easy depending on where you go.
Exactly.
And so all those things add up. This is very, very loose count, because in order to get a very accurate count, you'd have to go out and interview basically every team, every coach, find out where they stay, how many players you have. Right. But we're using a rough formula, and it's the number of teams, and we take, if they stay overnight, if we find out, we get some rough idea if some of them spend the night. But if you don't spend the night, we take your team times the number of players times 2.5.
Okay.
So that's basically a player or a parent and half a kid.
Right.
Which really isn't that many.
Exactly.
So you just say you have 10 teams times 10 players is 100, and then times 2.5, that's 250. Then we times it times $50, which we also feel is not that high of a number.
Exactly.
That's for somebody that doesn't spend the night. So that's $1,250 right there for just one team if just they day trip in. And we do the same thing. If they spend the night, instead of doing it by $50, we do it by 100.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take a 10 teams by 10 people times 2.5, then you're looking at $2,500
Right.
for one 10-team tournament.
Yes.
And that stuff adds up pretty quick. And
Very.
we looked at the tournaments we brought in as well, not only what the city brought in, but also the Crawdads unfortunately didn't play last year, so they ran a lot of older kids tournaments.
Right.
And we included anything the Hickory Metro Sports Commission brought in. The soccer tournaments, the CVYSA runs, Comscope Cup with the Rotary Club, and as well as the Autumn Blast. It's about 52 events, I think, if I think that number is correct. And we estimated, just on those low numbers, that it had a $1.9 million impact just last year during COVID.
And that's during COVID.
That's during COVID.
Yeah, that's a significant number.
Absolutely.
In and of itself, but in a normal year, it's going to be a multiple of that.
Oh,
it has to be. So that's interesting. I've always had a level of frustration being that, and I've expressed this in the past, but I'm happy to see that this is in place now and it's getting traction because, we would go to these tournaments with my oldest son and it's Winston, Charlotte, Greenville, Wilkes County, and 75%, not 3 out of 4, but sometimes 7, 8 out of 10 teams that were there had to pass through Hickory to get to where we were playing.
That's right.
And the same thing applies. Now, hopefully they stopped by through Hickory, but they wouldn't in the morning. It was just so 70, 80% of those teams on several different occasions could have easily been playing here in Hickory.
Right.
And it was more centrally located, and us be reaping the benefits of all that. And a lot of goes into play. You got to have facilities. You got to have different departments working together, different groups working together. You got to have the businesses realizing the numbers you just talked about. And I'm glad to hear that's coming all together. It's a significant impact on our economy.
Absolutely. The partnerships are key. We're really fortunate in this city that most of the groups all work really well together. Right. It's us working with the convention center. It's us working with the hotel people. It's us working with the restaurant folks. All those people need to come together to make this thing work. And
we're going to have Mandy Pitts Hildebrand on the broadcast or the podcast here probably in the next month.
Okay, great.
So she's over that. One of the departments that I go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
The tour, the actual convention center, and bringing people in to the city, not just sports, obviously, is what she does. So, but she'll talk more about that. Tell me a little bit about, obviously, on a daily basis, us with Southeast Retirement Planners, we're dealing with individuals' investments and finances, and you're in the role of the general manager at the Crawdads, and now over the recreation department. Tell me a little bit about some of the similarities, if there are some, about the economies of running a minor league team versus the role you're in now.
I think with any of it, it's all you've got to watch the bottom line with both of them. There's not unlimited resources in either way, and I think that part comes in to play. They're very similar. I think there's some differences, obviously, is businesses. Like some of the businesses you guys service, they're trying to make money. Cities typically spend money. They don't generate a ton of income, but they do generate in terms of they get their money through tax dollars and that type of thing, water, sewer.
And some of the things that you guys are talking about now, the money you're bringing in, right?
There is some money. It's more like you don't get a ton of money like from when you rent the fields. It's more about getting them in here.
Right.
It's maybe at best a break even in terms of staffing.
Correct.
Versus what you pay to rent it.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely adds all that economic impact, and
the economic impact is the key.
That's the key to that. And I think the difference is with the city, you got a certain number of dollars. Our department has a certain number of dollars, and you got to make those dollars work and stretch and figure out how you're going to serve the citizens with those dollars.
Right.
But the one thing with the sports tourism end of it, it's the upkeep of the fields is probably the most expensive part. Mm-hmm. You got to have staff to do that. Obviously, you have staff on the back end too that goes out and gets these tournaments, and we got to make these relationships. And we figure we just started. Unfortunately, you got to nowadays you can't have any kind of conversation without bringing up COVID. But we started this back in the first part of the end of June, early July of 19. So right then off the bat, we booked 7 or 8 tournaments that, baseball, softball, which is kind of our low-hanging fruit with Stanford Park and Kiwanis.
Right.
So we were able to book some of those right off the bat, and then everything shut down. Right when we kind of started to get our feet underneath us, everything shut down. And then, so we, nobody's really talking tournaments at that time. Correct. And just recently, we've really been opened up for basketball and that type of thing. Right. So now we're starting to get back into it. We actually had posted pre-COVID for a sports tourism coordinator. Okay. To help her run all of this stuff. And the person actually just started Monday.
Oh, really?
Started just on the 7th, June 7th.
So this traction, and haven't had necessarily a coordinator for this. So
we've basically been, our staff has really kind of been tag teaming it, making it work the best we can, but nobody's really been, we've been running the department as well.
Yeah, you got to do what everybody sees is the normal.
Exactly.
Right.
So that person just getting started, just getting going.
So would I be right in saying that what the sports tourism is only going to help the citizens more because the more money that comes into our city, the greater the economic impact, the more tax dollars there are to use to have better facilities, which then attracts more and just keeps the snowball going down the hill. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Okay. It's a great way to put it. And I think the one thing is the more we can do, and is if we start generating dollars and we show a real need for, whether it's, bigger facilities or nicer facilities or just additional facilities, those facilities are going to get used by the citizens.
Right.
Because, sports tourism is going to be on the weekend.
Yeah.
But the citizens are going to get to use these facilities during the week.
Exactly.
So the more we can do along those lines and the more that we get money coming in that allows us to do these types of things, it provides more opportunities. For example, the turf field out at Henry Fork is a great example.
That's new?
That's new. It's been ironically enough, the ribbon cutting, like COVID, whatever the date was in March when everything shut down, the very next day was the ribbon cutting for that turf field. Oh. So, it's done. We haven't officially cut a ribbon on it, but thank God it's been done because there was a flood out at Henry Fork in December, and the other 7 fields were all wiped out. Okay. And so that was the only field that we were able to use.
That's right.
For a long time. And now the other fields are starting to come along, but we had a lot of folks that some of the high schools used it this spring because it was so rainy and sports were so just mashed together.
Right.
That like we had a lot of soccer teams, a lot of high school soccer teams went out and used it. We were able to do some lacrosse practices out there where we wouldn't have been able to practice. Right. So that's an example of ideally you're going to have more fields and you're going to be able to bring tournaments in, but the citizens certainly have benefited from that field over the last 4 months already just because they were able to use it and we were able to put them in there, which was nice. And we're actually getting ready to build our second turf field out there.
Oh, that's great.
And hopefully it'll be ready. Well, not hopefully. It will be ready by the tournament, first weekend in November, the Autumn Blast tournament that CVYSA runs.
And for those listening that have never seen that facility, the reason it floods, there's a creek, the Henry Fork, Henry Fork River Park. It's in a floodplain, but it's beautiful fields, wide open land. But when the creek rises, it does get the fields.
Water's going to go somewhere.
Exactly. So, but if you haven't been out there, it is a gift to the city. It's a little bit, you don't really, it's not downtown.
No.
It's just right off the interstate and exit just right off 40.
Yeah, it's off of 121.
Right. And it's my kids have participated on those fields out there in lacrosse. Ran a cross country meet with their school there, and it's you go out there at any time, you see people walking, soccer, lacrosse, anything, and it's not just organized teams; it's citizens using that as well. So, what's kind of your goal or the city's goal from an economic or financial standpoint? Obviously, the proof is in the numbers already through a very challenging period of time, that the dollars, the economic impact is there. But is there some goals that you guys have?
There's no hard this is the number we're looking to reach, because I don't think we have had the opportunity to see what our niche market's going to be. And niche is the right word, but what the best opportunities for us are. We certainly have Stanford and Kiwanis, like we talked about earlier, but we don't have that basketball arena where you have 8 floors under one roof.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or, volleyball arena where you can get 16 floors in one place. Right. So I think we're going to need to find what we can do, and we got to find the right target for us and what fits in our area. And the goal, I guess, long term, this is Mark speaking, not the city, but is that we show such a need and such a desire that maybe we do build that arena.
Exactly. That
citizens can use during the week, and that we can bring in have 8 floors, and you can bring a basketball tournament in, or a volleyball tournament, or cheerleading, gymnastics, any of those types of things that you could bring in that really move the needle. And, I think our little test run, so to speak, would be a convention center, and with the expansion they're doing, and you'll be able to put 4 basketball floors and 8 volleyball courts in there once their expansion is done.
That's great. Okay.
And have 30-foot ceilings, and you could do, one thing people don't think cheerleading, you got to have high ceilings because they just shoot them up in the air so
that's
high.
Right. I know. I heard about that one time. I forgot about cheerleading, but that's a good point.
I think I think it's finding, and I say it again, I guess it is our niche a little bit. We're not going to probably compete against Rock Hill. Right. I mean, they just have bigger facilities. They've been doing it a lot longer.
Yeah, for those listening, Rock Hill was one of the first cities kind of our size, if you will, that really kind of threw some chips down and placed a bet on that. And it's proven very beneficial. And
I don't think they knew what they were getting into at the time. And that was 30 years ago. In fact, we had a meeting, this has been a little while ago, but with their mayor, just to give us some history. And he actually... he's no longer the mayor, former mayor, but he actually got voted out of office after they put those first soccer fields in. Yeah,
was it Doug Eccles? Yeah, he was the commissioner of the conference that Lenoir-Rhyne plays in. Yep. Still today, but he was one of the city commissioners got voted out because of those fields. But then he ended up getting voted in as mayor. That's right. I heard
so.
That
I mean, it kind of came full circle for them.
Itself.
It did.
Yeah.
And you got there's places around us people are traveling to, and Greenville we talked about, and Sevierville's got some facilities, and Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, all those places. I do think Hickory is positioned in a great spot.
Yeah, centrally located. It surely is.
Centrally located, right off I-40. Would you rather come to Hickory and play, or fight the traffic to get into Gatlinburg and out of Gatlinburg?
Yeah, well, you're one wreck away from destroying an afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're just tied up on the roads.
And like you said, centrally located, a lot of teams, a lot of places, a lot of different cities can get here. A lot of teams will be able to get here in, a couple-hour drive.
And, as this grows, I mean, where there's demand, other things follow. You have more restaurants, you have more hotels, you have other things that kind of, I guess when the ship rises, I guess when the water,
when the water rises, all ships rise.
Exactly. So I'm encouraged to hear this. I've been pumped to talk more, about this with you, but we could talk the rest of the afternoon, but I thought it was interesting to kind of get your, with your past history and then what the city of Hickory is looking to do. It impacts each citizen, whether you have whether you frequent the parks or whether you have a child or grandchild that's participating, the quality of living, if you read any articles out there, they're talking about the amenities that a city has. And we've got a number of people moving from, there's a mass exodus they talk about financially, from these large cities. And North Carolina is one of the states benefiting from it. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were doing a search, 2 separate occasions in the same neighborhood, a different state than North Carolina. They punched in a search into a website asking them different questions, and Hickory came up as the place that they should look at moving. And so, and they picked up and moved. I think they were moving both from California, actually.
Okay.
So there's been a mass exodus out of some states, and Texas and Florida get a lot of that because of their state income tax reprieves. But North Carolina is not far behind. And when people do those searches for all 4 seasons, and people, when you're moving, you want when you're trying to raise a family, or you're a family type person, like to get out and do stuff, parks and recreation is one of the things that people look at as a desirable feature. So it appears that with all this, it's going to get more attention brought to Hickory.
Absolutely. You're going to get more people to come to Hickory that maybe have never been here before because of tournaments. They're going to see everything that we've got going on. They're going to go back and say, man, we went to Hickory. And I mean, when you guys, if you go to a tournament, you've got downtime.
Oh, yeah.
You walk around the city or drive to go get, so even if you're just going to get something to eat, you take a look what's going around, and you see, hey, that's pretty neat, or that's not neat, or whatever. Yeah. And people are going to see Hickory and think, wow, this is a pretty nice place. And they're going to go back and go, we went to Hickory, and that was pretty nice. And to your point, you don't have to have kids. You don't have to, you could be a 45-year-old, guy or girl, and maybe you're unmarried or whatever, and maybe you don't go to the parks, or you don't have kids, or whatever the case. But as we bring in more dollars into the area and we do more things, you benefit as well. As we make things nicer, we have nicer facilities, we have nicer amenities, we, as you mentioned, a better quality of life. All those things add up to make a difference.
Right. It does. Well, we thank you for being on our podcast. This is something new that we've started up, but we appreciate you being a guest of ours. You've always been a good friend of mine and Les's, and everybody at Southeast Retirement Planners. A little unknown fact, or maybe known fact, Jennifer, your wife, used to work with us a long time ago before she moved along to something else of more interest to her. But we were happy to have her and appreciate y'all's friendship. And I'm pumped you're in this role. Expect big things, and we'll maybe get you back for a part 2 sometime too, maybe as an update on bigger and better numbers. But we'd like to once again thank everybody for attending this session of our Southeast Retirement Planners podcast. If you don't currently work with us, I always want to bring it to your attention that you can find out more information about us by logging on to our website at www.seretirementplanners.com or call our office at 828-855-2067. And any person we don't currently work with, we always offer them the opportunity for a complimentary financial checkup, which is an hour complimentary that we sit down and just get to know each other better in your situation. So check us out online, and make sure that you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify and through Google as well. And join us for our next time and next Southeast Retirement Planners podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member of FINRA, SIPC. Southeast Retirement Planners is not affiliated with LPL Financial or registered as a broker-dealer or investment advisor.